Before the show starts, drop a comment below with where you're watching from, then sit back, relax, and get ready for some chilling stories. I've been a trucker for over 15 years now. I've crossed damn near every state line in the country more times than I can count. You learn to appreciate the solitude after a while. The long roads, the silence, the late-night radio stations. But every once in a while, something happens out there that makes you question just how alone you really are. It was early October, and I was hauling a load from Utah to Missouri. I'd been driving for hours, eyes burning from the road, and figured I'd stop for the night. My GPS pointed out a rest area off a remote highway in western Colorado. It wasn't much, just a couple of old vending machines, a dimly lit bathroom, and maybe 2 other rigs parked way at the end of the lot. I didn't recognize any company logos on them. I pulled into one of the spots near the middle and killed the engine. The night air was chilly, probably in the mid-40s, and there was this thick fog creeping across the pavement like a slow-moving ghost. I've slept in sketchy spots before, so I wasn't exactly nervous, just tired. I did my usual routine, locked both doors, drew the curtain behind the driver's seat, and laid back in my sleeper bunk. Threw on a hoodie, plugged in my phone, and closed my eyes. It couldn't have been more than 30 minutes before I heard it. This click. Not loud, just enough to pull me halfway out of sleep. I stayed still listening. Then I heard it again. Click. Click. It sounded like it was coming from the passenger side door, like someone gently testing the handle. My heart gave one of those slow thuds you feel in your neck. I reached for the small flashlight I keep next to the bed, turned it on, and waited. No more clicks. Just silence. I told myself it could have been wind, or maybe some pressure shift in the cab. You get used to weird truck noises when you sleep on the road. But then came the footsteps. They were soft, deliberate, crunching slowly on gravel, moving along the driver's side. I didn't move. I just listened, barely breathing. The footsteps stopped near the front of the truck. Then came a very quiet tap-tap on the windshield. Just 2, like someone using their fingernail. I stayed dead silent. After about 30 seconds of nothing, I slowly peeked through the small slit in the curtain. Through the foggy glass, I could make out a shadow. It wasn't facing me directly, but it was standing right in front of the truck, maybe 5 feet away. Just standing there. I couldn't see a face. I could barely tell if it was a man or woman. But I swear, whoever it was, they were staring straight at the cab. I grabbed my phone and tried to open the camera. I thought maybe if I got a pic or video, I'd at least have something to show, just in case. But the second I lifted my phone toward the windshield, the figure moved. Not fast, just walked calmly out of view toward the passenger side again. I waited another minute before opening the curtain fully, keeping low. That's when I saw the van. It wasn't there when I pulled in. It was an old white panel van, parked about 40 feet away, no logos, no plates. Just sitting there with its headlights off. I could barely make it out through the fog, but I knew damn well it hadn't been there earlier. I texted my buddy Frank. He's also a trucker, and we keep tabs on each other. I sent him a short message. At rest stop in CO, weird shit happening. Look at this. Then I sent the video I had managed to start recording. It was short, mostly fog and dark shapes, but the tension in my voice was enough to make him text back right away. Get the hell out of there. I tried calling him. No signal. Then the worst part happened. One of my side windows got covered. Like someone draped a thick black cloth or tarp over it from the outside. Blocked out all light. Then the other side. Then, the lights in the rest area went out. All of them. Pitch black. And I wasn't alone. I've never heard silence like that before. The kind that wraps around you so thick, it's almost louder than noise. No wind. No crickets. Just darkness, and the slow drumbeat of my heart pounding in my ears. I stayed low, crouched in the narrow space behind the driver's seat, trying to steady my breathing. My flashlight was still in my hand, but I didn't dare turn it on. I was afraid of what it might show. Then something tugged on the door handle. Not a jiggle. A tug. Whoever was out there knew how to handle a truck. They went straight for the mechanical latch, tried it twice, then moved around to the other side and tried the same thing. But I lock everything the second I park. Old habit. Then I heard a voice. It was muffled through the glass, but clear enough to freeze my blood. Hey, you okay in there? You hurt? We saw your lights flicker. Bullshit. I hadn't flicked any lights. My rig was off the whole time. And there was no we. There was them. Whoever they were. I stayed completely silent. After a few seconds, another voice chimed in. This one was deeper, slower. We can help you out, man. Just open the door. I didn't move. Just slid my hand across to the ignition, praying I wouldn't fumble it. And that's when I heard the side steps creak. They were climbing up. Someone was standing on the metal platform, just below my passenger door. I could hear their boots scraping softly against it. I twisted the key, and the engine roared to life. In the same breath, I slammed it into drive, floored the pedal, and yanked the wheel hard to the left. Tires screeched against the pavement as I peeled out of the rest stop, almost hitting the nearest bench. I caught a glimpse in the side mirror, two figures stumbling back from the truck, and the white van lurching to life behind me. No plates, just headlights. It started following me. I hit 40 miles per hour in seconds, pushing up to 65 on the winding road. My trailer was still attached, heavy as hell, and I couldn't risk tipping it on the curves. But the van stayed close. Too close. Whoever they were, they knew how to chase without drawing attention. No high beams, no swerving, just quiet pursuit through the dark back roads. I kept glancing at my phone. Still no signal. That's when I remembered. About 15 miles up the road, there was a way station I had passed earlier in the day. I didn't know if it'd be open, but it was something. I pushed the rig as hard as I could without losing control, engine growling, tires humming, the trailer swaying slightly on the turns. Finally, a green glow cut through the trees. A sign lit up, open, way station next right. I took the exit hard, barreling onto the small access road. The van didn't follow. It kept going straight, disappearing into the dark. I pulled into the lot and jumped out of the cab before the brakes fully hissed to a stop. There were two officers inside the way station booth. I must have looked like a lunatic, sweaty, wide-eyed, talking too fast. But they let me in, called the county sheriff, and I showed them the video. They took it seriously. Apparently, that stretch of road had a history of strange activity. People going missing. Abandoned rigs found days later. But they never had anything concrete, until now. A few days later, I got a call. They found signs of tampering at the rest stop. Ropes, syringes, burner phones. There was even a small shack hidden in the woods behind it with chains bolted to the walls. Trafficking, maybe. Organ trade. No one knew for sure. But they shut the place down. Closed the access. Put up signs. My story helped spark all that. Still, I haven't slept in my truck since. Not unless it's at a well-lit, fully staffed truck stop. I used to love the open road. Now, every time I pull over at night, I wonder if someone's watching from the shadows, waiting for the next trucker to let their guard down. I've always been more of a loner on the road. I like it that way, no one to answer to, no distractions, just me and the hum of the highway. So when I bumped into Seth at a truck stop just outside Amarillo, I wasn't expecting it to turn into anything more than a 5-minute catch-up. But there he was, Seth Palmer. I hadn't seen the guy since high school. We used to hang out back in the day, played basketball, skipped class together, pulled dumb pranks. We weren't exactly best friends, but we had history. He looked rougher than I remembered, grizzled beard, sun-worn face, those tired eyes you only get from years behind the wheel. But he smiled like no time had passed. Brandon? No freaking way, man. We shook hands, did the usual, what V you been up to talk. Turns out, he got into trucking about 5 years ago. Said he'd been running solo ever since a bad breakup, just bouncing from job to job, state to state. I figured it was harmless when he suggested we roll out together. Said he was heading east like I was, and thought it'd be cool to ride in convoy for a few days. Hell, I said, why not? For the first day or two, it was actually kind of nice having someone to chat with over the CB again. We'd joke, reminisce, trade stories about rough deliveries and sketchy diners. It almost felt like we were kids again, back when the world felt simpler, and we didn't have to look over our shoulders all the damn time. But then things started to feel off. It began with the way he always parked right next to me. Even when there were dozens of open spots at a rest area, he'd wedge his rig right beside mine. No big deal, I told myself. Probably just habit. But then, he started showing up in places he shouldn't be known about. Like this one night in Oklahoma. I decided last minute to grab a motel instead of sleeping in the truck. I didn't post about it, didn't say a word over the radio. Just pulled into this dusty old place and checked in. Around 10 p.m., there was a knock on my door. It was Seth. Figured I'd crash here too, he said, smiling like it was no big deal. Saw your rig out front. My truck was parked behind the building. That's when the gut feeling kicked in, deep, cold, unmistakable. I laughed it off, made some excuse about having an early start, and went to bed with the chair wedged under the doorknob. The next day, I told him I had to split off, made up a fake delivery a few towns over. He nodded, didn't argue. But as I pulled onto the freeway, I spotted his truck sliding into the entrance ramp behind me. He was following me. I switched routes twice that day, took weird turns, even stopped at a way station I didn't need to, just to see if he'd keep coming. And he did, always a few minutes behind. I started to ignore his CB calls. He'd go, "Yo Brandon, everything good?" in this weird, forced tone, like he was trying too hard to sound casual. Eventually I shut the damn radio off. Then came the texts. "You shouldn't try to ditch me, man. I thought we were friends. You always did run when things got real." That last one, sent at 2:17 a.m. while I was sleeping in a rest area outside Little Rock. I hadn't told anyone where I was. Not even my dispatcher. That was the night I stopped pretending this was just some awkward reunion. I didn't sleep a minute. Every sound outside the cab made me flinch. At one point, I swore I saw headlights creeping up behind the truck, then fading out as if someone had killed the engine. I waited, holding my breath, hand clenched around my pocket knife. Nothing happened. But I wasn't about to sit around and find out. I took off just before dawn, didn't even stop for coffee. Just drove. No music. No radio. Just me and the road, trying to figure out how the hell a guy I barely knew had turned into a goddamn stalker. That day, I started documenting everything, screenshots of texts, timestamps of places I'd seen him, dash cam footage whenever I caught him tailing me. I even started checking the trailer more often, paranoid he'd tampered with it somehow. Things escalated fast after I blocked his number. He started emailing me. Messages that bounced between apologies and threats. "I just wanted to talk, man. You're making this worse than it needs to be. I always looked out for you. Remember that." Then came the photo. It was a picture of my truck, taken from behind, at night, parked at a truck stop in Mississippi. He was still watching me. I started sleeping with my knife open beside the bunk. Kept a hammer in the footwell. But what really freaked me out was when I pulled into a hotel in Alabama, one I'd picked at random, off a back road near Montgomery. And as I walked into the lobby, the girl at the desk said, "Your friend already checked in. He's in 207. I didn't check in. I got back in the truck and drove until my eyes blurred. That night I called the cops for the first time. Filed a report. Showed them the emails and messages, the photo. The deputy took it seriously, told me they'd send a patrol to check the area, but unless Seth did something physical, there wasn't much they could do. "You're in interstate territory now," he said. "Complicates things." I kept moving, changed routes, slept only at crowded truck stops or hotels with front desk staff I could trust. Still, there were moments I caught a glimpse of a familiar truck. Same busted headlight, same faded blue cab. Sometimes I wasn't even sure if it was him, or if my mind was just unraveling. The final straw came 2 weeks later in Georgia. I had parked at a secured yard overnight, gated entry, cameras, the whole deal. Woke up around 3 a.m. because something felt off. My cab smelled weird, like burnt rubber and old metal. That's when I saw it. A shadow moving across the side mirror. Slow, deliberate. I reached for the dash cam feed, live view. And there he was. Seth, outside the fence, just standing there, staring at my truck. I called 911. He was gone by the time they showed up, but the footage was clear enough to confirm it was him. That, combined with the other evidence, finally got some traction. Turns out, Seth had a record, restraining orders in 2 states. One case still open in Arizona. Obsessive behavior. Threats. Minor assault. They put out a warrant, but last I heard, he was still on the run. I changed everything after that. Phone number. CB handle. Even the company I drove for. Told dispatch I'd only take jobs that kept me off that route. I couldn't take the chance. It's been almost a year now, and I haven't seen him again. But I still check my mirrors a little too often. Still sleep with a knife under the pillow. Still wonder if maybe, just maybe, he's out there, driving behind some other poor bastard, smiling like nothing's wrong. Sometimes saving an hour ends up costing you a whole lot more. I'd been driving trucks long enough to know better. But when a dispatcher waves an extra $100 in your face for an express delivery, your common sense tends to shut the hell up. I was supposed to haul a load of construction gear to a remote site near Cuesta, New Mexico. Not a huge town, just a few buildings, gas station, and maybe 2 stoplights if I remember right. The guy I talked to said the main route was under construction, but if I took this old county road, I could shave nearly 90 minutes off the trip. Said it was a little bumpy, but nothing a big rig couldn't handle. It was early afternoon when I hit the turnoff. The road started paved but narrowed quick, with patches of worn-out asphalt and overgrown brush clawing at the sides. My cell signal dropped to 0 not long after. That should have been my first red flag, but I was focused on making time. The GPS still showed the route, and I figured I'd be in and out before dark. But about 30 minutes in, I started to feel off. The road wasn't on the map anymore. I was still technically following the route, but the GPS display had switched to this glitchy blank screen with a blinking arrow. The kind of error you usually get when the device is lost. I stopped the truck, rebooted the GPS. When it powered back on, it suddenly rerouted me down what looked like an old access road. Just a dirt trail really barely wide enough for the rig. I figured maybe it was one of those hidden back paths they use out in the sticks. That was mistake number 2. The deeper I went, the quieter it got. Not peaceful quiet, heavy quiet. No birds, no bugs. Just the crunch of gravel under my tires and the occasional creak of the trailer suspension. Then, like clockwork, the engine started acting up. Nothing too dramatic, just a stutter like it was struggling to breathe. I slowed down and decided to pull over before I got stranded in the middle of nowhere. I hopped out and walked around the front to check under the hood. That's when I saw the footprints. They were right there in the dirt, maybe 10 feet from the driver's side door. Human. Barefoot. The weird thing was they weren't walking toward the truck. They were just around it, circling, like someone had walked in slow, deliberate loops. I looked around. Nothing. Just a few dead trees, a dry creek bed, and miles of open silence. No sign of anyone. No tire tracks besides mine. Not even a bird overhead. I snapped a picture of the footprints with my phone, but with no service, I couldn't send it to anyone. I got back in the truck, locked the doors, and tried the ignition again. The engine coughed twice, then roared back to life. I wasn't about to wait around. I kept moving, but now I was paranoid. Kept checking the mirrors, jumping every time a branch scraped the side of the trailer. The sun started to drop behind the hills, and the whole landscape took on this reddish, washed-out look, like everything was dying. And then the radio kicked on. Not the CB. The truck's actual radio. I hadn't touched it. It had been off the whole trip. It was just static at first, low, crackly. But then I swear to God it said my name. Douglas? Barely above a whisper. Like it was buried under the static. I froze. Looked down at the radio like it was about to grow teeth. Then it went dead again. Silence. That's when I realized. I didn't remember seeing the sun set. It was just dark now, like someone had flipped a switch. The darkness hit like a wall. No gradual fade, no warm twilight. 1 second it was late afternoon. The next it was pitch black outside, like I'd been driving through some kind of tunnel without realizing it. I flicked on the high beams, but they barely cut through the dust and fog that had started to gather. The road looked narrower now, more uneven. I could feel every bump like the earth itself was shifting underneath me. And then the engine died. No warning. Just click. Total shutdown. Lights off, dash dead. No power. I sat there in the dark, listening to the ticking sound the engine makes as it cools. My hands were still on the wheel, frozen. Then I heard it again. Footsteps. Slow. Crunching on gravel. Coming from behind the truck. I locked the doors, both sides, automatically. I wasn't thinking anymore, just reacting. The footsteps stopped near the back of the trailer. I couldn't see anything through the mirrors, too dark, too dusty. I leaned forward, trying not to breathe too loud, and that's when the radio came on again. This time, no static, just a voice. "You're not supposed to be here." I stared at the radio like it owed me an answer. The voice was low, flat. No emotion, no accent, just a statement. It didn't repeat. It didn't explain. Just that. I grabbed my flashlight and turned it on, aiming it at the side mirror. Nothing. Then bang. A single knock on the back of the trailer. Not loud. Almost polite. I nearly dropped the flashlight. A second knock. Same spot. Then silence. I waited. And waited. When I finally got the nerve to look out the side window, the flashlight beam caught something that made my stomach drop. A handprint. Right on the driver's side glass. Smudged, greasy, long fingers. Like it had been pressed there hard. But I never heard anything on that side. I turned the key again. Nothing. Not even a click. I tried the CB. Dead. The flashlight flickered. That's when I made a choice. I wasn't staying there. I climbed into the sleeper, pulled out the emergency beacon from under the bunk, a big battery-powered floodlight I keep for breakdowns, and switched it on. The thing lit up the area like a stadium. Bright white light flooded the trees and brush around me. And there was nothing there. No people. No animals. No signs of movement. But the footprints were back. Now on both sides of the truck. Dozens of them. Going in circles. Some close to the tires. Some leading straight to the hood and disappearing beneath it. I don't know how long I stayed like that. Engine off, doors locked, beacon lighting up a whole lot of empty. But eventually, somewhere around 5 a.m., the dashboard lights blinked back on. No reason. No warning. The engine started like nothing had happened. I floored it. I didn't even care about the damn load anymore. I just followed the dirt road until it became gravel, then asphalt, then, finally, a highway. My signal came back an hour later, and I called the dispatcher, told him I was done with the job. Didn't even ask about the bonus. A week later, I got curious and started asking around. Called a guy I knew who used to haul logs in that region. When I mentioned the road, he went quiet. Then he said, "Locals call that place the Blind Path. Folks go missing out there all the time. Cops don't even bother searching anymore. I've taken some bad routes in my career. Gotten lost. Gotten stuck. But nothing like that. Whatever the hell that place was, it didn't want me there. And I won't ever go back.